Welcome to Now We're Getting Somewhere. I'm Katie, and I'm a certified life coach, but I've also been a management consultant at McKinsey and a product manager at a tech startup. In other words, I know what it feels like to have a life that looks pretty good on paper, but doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I help my professional clients develop lives that are more meaningful, happy, and also more successful. And I want to share the same practical insights with you. Let's go. Hey, everybody. So my personal update for today, before we get into the topic of today's session, is that I just spent most of my day yesterday at this specialist appointment across town for my son. He's had some GI issues for a while, so we saw a pediatric GI specialist, and then she was able to get us in for an x-ray because she wanted to see his abdomen. Anyway, and I am just still sitting with how awesome she was. She was just so warm and encouraging, but also incredibly competent and just on top of it. And she listened really well as we told her sort of all these twists and turns of his GI issues. And she just was so thorough and rattling off all these different tests that she wanted us to do. And I just felt really cared for. And she got the results of the x-ray back really quickly, and even that gave us some useful insights. And I was just holding today how speaking with this specialist just made my life better. I mean, also literally she made my son's life better because now we have some good directions to go in, but just the power of a wonderful professional. I think I'm just holding Dr. Huang in my heart of how amazing she was, and just thinking of the power that an amazing professional can have in your life. And I'm hoping that I could have that impact on some people. And I guess I wanted to share it too, because maybe you have the power to provide that encouragement and competence in whatever area is your specialty to folks in your life. Just holding Dr. Huang in my heart today. I wanted to share that with you. Okay, so today's podcast is for you if there is an area of your life that does not come naturally. So maybe that is some element of your work or parenthood or friendship or your marriage. Maybe it's health or fitness or some hobby that you love, but man, that does not come naturally. I think that's such a human frustration, don't you think? We want to be skillful at something and we want it to come easily. And when it's hard, when we have to work for it, we can feel really frustrated and insecure and look at other people who seem like they don't have to struggle like we do. And we feel man, why doesn't this come naturally to me? I'm just kind of bad at this, aren't I? So today's podcast is going to take the form of two different client stories on exactly this topic. First, I want to tell you a story about a client I was coaching a few weeks ago who came up with such an amazing insight on this topic that it has been kind of zinging around inside my head and my heart ever since. That insight was so good, I ended up sharing it with a second client recently in a totally different context, and I want to tell you that story too. And I think by the time we're finished, you will see how this idea might apply to your life too. And hopefully it will zing around inside of you all day, just like it's been zinging around inside of me. Let's go. So here's my first client story. I was working with a client. We were working on many things over the course of our engagement, but in this session, we were talking about motherhood. And for this client, motherhood has not felt easy. In fact, it's felt pretty hard a lot of the time. This client often finds her kids challenging and draining, especially given that she also has a full-time, often stressful job, and so she's often pretty tired. And I think she would also say that she doesn't always feel like she knows how to mother right, giving air quotes at that, quote unquote right. She has tried. Man, has she tried a bunch of different things. She informs herself, but she also still makes mistakes and loses her temper and yells and then apologizes and makes certain parenting choices and later thinks to herself, man, I should have made a different parenting choice. And she has adjusted her parenting strategy several times over the course of her kids' lives. And we were talking about it and she was saying to me, Katie, I'm just not a great mom. I'm kind of not a great, maybe even a bad mom. I'm not one of those moms who has everything come naturally to them. I'm kind of an unnatural mom. And I knew what she meant when she said that things didn't feel like they came naturally. She was referencing some particular kind of mom who just seems to know what to say naturally, who has an intuitive sense of what her kids need, and she doesn't lose her temper. And maybe this kind of quote unquote natural mom is also crafty or just knows the right games or whatever. And my client doesn't totally feel like she does any of those things. And on one hand, in that moment, I could have gone down the road of pushing back. Like, does parenting really come naturally, even to those moms who seem like they do it so naturally and intuitively? But sometimes as a coach, I found it more useful to just accept at least some of the premises that my clients' brains are serving them. Like, okay, let's say that a natural mom does exist, and you are not one of them. You're not a natural mom. And some part of that did make sense to me for my client, because at least part of what would make a natural mom would be, for example, growing up in a household where you had a natural mom yourself. So you knew how to be a great mom because you had that modeled for you your whole life. And my client, I knew, didn't have that. She loves her parents, but they did leave a lot to be desired in that department. She didn't have role models for the kind of parent she wanted to be. But remember, this client had told me a couple of things at once. She had said something along the lines of, I'm sure I don't remember this exactly, but this is what I remember. She said something along the lines of, Katie, I'm not a great mom. In fact, I might be kind of a bad mom. And I'm definitely not one of those moms who has everything come naturally to them. An unnatural mom. So what I did say to her was, okay, fine. Let's say that you're not a natural mom. Let's say motherhood does not come naturally to you. I will accept that premise, at least for now. But I do not think it is serving you to be equating not having it come naturally to not being a good mom or being even a bad mom. You might be not a natural mom, but it's very clear to me that you are committed to your kids. You care about them deeply. You've put in an enormous amount of effort and time into supporting them. Yes, you make some mistakes, but you're always trying to be better. So it might be true that you're not a natural mom, but I do not believe that it's at all true that you're a bad mom. So I said to her, can we come up with a different word or phrase to describe what kind of mom you are? If you're not a natural mom, but you're also not a bad mom. And in fact, you are a good mom in many, many ways. And that was kind of like right at the end of our session. So I made that her homework for the week, to noodle on what kind of mom she was. Like, what was it to be a quote unquote unnatural mom? We didn't love that word, so she had to come up with something else. And she came up back to me the next week with the most brilliant thing. She said to me, Katie, I'm a self-made mom. And I just love that. Self-made mom. Self-made mom. Self-made moms are moms who, did not come by motherhood naturally. Nothing was handed to them. They didn't, quote unquote, inherit it. Just like if somebody's a self-made millionaire or whatever, they didn't inherit that money. They earned it. And self-made moms, or people who are self-made in any arena, had to build whatever skills they have, often in a pretty scrappy way. And let's be clear, there's a dignity, there's an honor in being self-made. No one can take that from you. So that can be a thing to be really proud of. And also, being self-made can also mean that, you're a little rough around the edges. My client was and is a little rough around the edges as a mom. But she's also fierce and loving, and man, does she keep learning and trying and growing. Being self-made is different from not having to work for something. There's cons to it, and there are also pros. But even as I share that, I love that framing. I love that it celebrates what is honorable and acknowledges those rough edges too. My client also said that as she was sort of coming up with this concept, she had been playing with the idea of being a DIY mom, which is kind of like a similar idea, but she felt that self-made mom captured it even better. And I totally agree. So I wanted to make this podcast because I just love this idea. Even as I share it now, I love this way of relating to parts of us that don't come naturally. And I've been holding this idea within me because it's just so good. And it feels like it applies to so many different parts of life. And then I was coaching a different client last week about her leadership at work. So a totally different topic. And I ended up sharing this concept with her too. So that leads me to my second story, which I wanted to share with you too. So this second client, as I said, I was coaching her on a couple of different aspects of her leadership at work. We were working on some stuff around how to work with difficult colleagues, a bit about communicating more directly, a bit about kind of resolving some tricky situations at work. She'd had some pretty good insights. And then we came to the end of the session and she said to me, Katie, all this is so good, but sometimes I feel kind of insecure. Like, shouldn't I already have all this figured out? And what came up for me first is probably what's even coming up for you as you listen to this right now, which is like, wait, doesn't everybody have to at some point figure everything out? And I also want to give the context, which is to say that this client is not some entry-level 22-year-old employee. She's like a legit leader in a well-known company. So she actually does have a ton figured out already. It's not like it's like, oh, I'm figuring out everything new right now. So I said that to her, doesn't everybody have to have everything figured out at some point? Doesn't that kind of never end? And she said to me, I do know that. I do know that we all have to figure things out. But also, and I want to say, just as an aside, I love that she said this next thing. I love that she was so honest. She said, I sometimes have this vision of like Beyonce, who, Beyonce was like fully formed by the time she was 18. Beyonce has been this presence, this amazing pop star, almost out of the womb. Just letting all that land in my body as I say this. I love this. And obviously, we could interrogate this. I am sure that Beyonce has not been this unchanged, perfect pop star from the womb. I'm sure she has had to learn and grow in all kinds of ways from when she was 18 until now. And on some level, my client, a smart person, she knew this too. But what she was sharing was almost a more emotional truth. She had this emotional truth, this emotional belief that people who are fully formed, in theory, like Beyonce exist, and that my client was not one of them. And again, sometimes I just let my clients' brains keep certain assumptions because clearly this was like a well-established one. So I let her keep that for the moment. And instead I offered her this idea of being self-made. I said to her, okay, fine. Let's take this as a fact. It's probably not actually a fact, but let's take it for the moment. That these kind of quote unquote natural leaders exist. These folks who do not have to go through all this messy and complex learning and growth, who don't have to work with a coach, all this stuff which exposes our weaknesses. It can feel really vulnerable and difficult. Let's assume for a moment that those fully formed from the womb natural leaders exist. Fine. Despite all this, is it possible that you could just be a different kind of leader? Could you be a self-made leader? Oh, it lands on me even when I say that. Self-made. And could there be a certain dignity to being a self-made leader? Like, yeah, you're a little scrappy, but you earned every freaking thing you have. You fought for it. You worked for it, and there's something amazing about that. Just like being somebody who is self-made with their fortune or whatever else. Yeah, you're a little rough around the edges. You don't have the quote-unquote manners, so to speak, of somebody who, again, quote-unquote inherited their skills, who came by them naturally. But also being self-made is pretty cool in a lot of ways. You have strengths that those quote-unquote natural folks don't have. And this concept seemed to really land with her too. We didn't have to dismantle in that particular call the idea that these quote unquote natural leaders exist. Because on some level, she intellectually knew that they didn't either, like not really. It was a bit of an easier move though in that moment to just create space for her kind of leadership, self-made leadership, that could have dignity and strength as well. That gave her a certain kind of confidence that she could embody to kind of bypass the negative thoughts in her head. Oh, so that's my idea. That's my offering to you all this week, my friends. If there's something you're struggling with, something that doesn't come naturally, whether it's in friendship or work or romance or health or creativity, maybe the fact that it doesn't come naturally doesn't have to be a weakness. Maybe it could just mean that you're self-made. There is a dignity, a grit, a pride that comes from being self-made, even if it also comes with being a little rough around the edges sometimes. I hope this concept lands with you as well as it's landed with me, everybody. Take care. I'll be rooting for you. If you really want to change in a meaningful, lasting way, that's when you need a life coach. Every client I've worked with has had incredibly personalized reasons why they're in the tired or anxious or stuck
or uninspired state they're in. Working with me can help you identify those roadblocks, which are usually blind spots that you genuinely cannot see, and implement a profoundly customized, doable plan for overcoming them. I have a very small, high-end, one-on-one coaching practice. If you'd like to be my next client, reach out at katiesiever.com. I'd love to meet you.